This is a short presentation on writing math formative assessments. In this presentation, you will see the materials and resources that you can use when you create formative assessments. So the first thing that you should always do is you should always look at your standards. We know that our standards are the ultimate goal of every grade level. They're the reason why we are teaching what we're teaching. So when you look at your standards, you can look in your standards book. You can look online, but you can also look at your KUDs. And what I did was I pulled a third grade KUD that was created when we began LFS in our district. And I highlighted just two important parts. So the first part is the critical areas. In this unit, I think it's going to be important to develop an understanding of fractions and unit fractions. So then I went down to the do column, and in this column, you'll see all of the different standards that are addressed within this unit. So for me, as a math teacher, I know that number line is a very, very important concept for students to understand. And I also know that it's one of our newer skills when we adopted the Common Core State Standards. So for me, I'm going to focus on understanding two fractions as equivalent if they are the same size or the same point on a number line. So I'm going to create my formative assessment. I chose the standard I want to focus on. I can also take a look at our student learning maps. Our student learning maps, they're hanging in our rooms. Our kids know what they are, but again, they are just a shell of the unit. So our learning maps, they will show us the learning essential questions, and our learning essential questions are not necessarily your formative assessments. They are just the starting point. So I highlighted how do I know that two fractions are equivalent because that addresses the standard that I chose. You'll also see on this learning map that there are assessment prompts. These are suggestions, and these are not included on all learning maps. So you can use these suggestions as formative assessments if you'd like, but you do not have to. You can also create your own. That's completely up to you and your team. So once I've looked at my standards, I looked at my learning map, I know that everything is in line with what I'm teaching. Another thing that I like to do, and again, just a suggestion, is to look at the types of questions on the common assessment. So I know that we do not want to teach to the tests because if we do that, then we're not really getting a true gauge of what our students know. But something that's important is to look at the types of questions. So I think it's a good idea to create a formative assessment that resembles the types of questions that are on the test because those questions that are on the test also resemble the things that you will see on Smarter Balance. So we have multiple choice questions, constructed response, error analysis is a big one, true and false. And everything that you see on our common assessments and on Smarter Balance will always ask for justification or show your reasoning or show your work. So by looking at some of the things that are expected at the end of the unit based on the common assessment, I can create formative assessments ahead of time to resemble an error analysis question or to resemble a question that says, how do you know? And to reason about the answer. So this is something that I like to do when I create formative assessments. So finally, the last thing, obviously, is to look within your unit. We don't have to recreate the wheel. A lot of times, these things are already included in our units. So this is from the third grade unit on fractions, and this is an additional Common Core lesson. So for me, I would think that, okay, here I am. I have just finished the lesson on number lines, and I want to see what students know. So I want to give them a formative assessment to make sure that they're understanding number lines and equivalency together. So I can create something, or I can look at what's already given to me. So here is a daily practice sheet that was included in the additional Common Core student workbook pages. And I think this had probably 6 or 8 questions. Maybe for my formative assessment, I just want to use these 3. And maybe I want to add a box here that says justify or explain or how do you know, so that I get a better gauge of where my students are at this time. So again, these are just suggestions and steps and different things that you can try when you are creating or finding or adapting formative assessments. Just like we said in our earlier presentation, the purpose of formative assessments is to inform your instruction and to collaborate with your team. So what you would I think you should do when you finish creating formative assessment or while you're creating them is collaborate with your team about how you're going to give the assessment. Again, it doesn't have to be paper and pencil. It doesn't have to be an exit ticket. You can absolutely use your technology tools, all the different programs that we've learned about, exit tickets, different, Kahoots and formative assessments and Padlets and everything else. You also want to decide when you're going to give it. So if I'm on a team of 3 teachers, we need to give the assessment around the same time so that we can, better decide what we need to do moving forward in the unit. We also want to talk about what's expected. If you create a formative assessment, you should have some expectations for what you're hoping to get out of it. And then finally, you should collaborate with your team about the results of the assessment and what you want to do from here. So hopefully this helps you when you create math formative assessments.